Rick, I had the most interesting thing for dinner last night. Can I tell you about it?
Please, please, please.
I recently acquired a vegetable spiralizer.
A what?
A spiralizer that makes noodles out of hard vegetables. And I took half of a small sweet potato and I made a voluminous bowl of sweet potato noodles with this one little tiny half a sweet potato. And then I was doing it as an experiment, so I didn't really go to a lot of trouble with the sauce, but I just I heated it in the microwave, and then I just put a little olive oil, Parmesan cheese, salt, pepper, and red pepper flakes, and it was really, really delicious.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Mm-hmm. What I ate really pales in comparison. You know what I ate?
No.
Cheese and crackers. Even that I thought was a lot of work.
Yeah.
What you just went through, I was like, my God.
Yeah. No, it's no worse than grating cheese or something.
I literally just bought a box of Wheat Thins and a chunk of Port Salute, put my little feet up, had a glass of wine, and ate the whole thing. And boy, was I happy.
Yeah, I bet. It sounds delicious. There's nothing I like better than wine and cheese for dinner. There's no question.
You know me.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of You Won't Believe What I Ate Last Night. I'm Kate DeVore.
And I'm Rick Fiore.
And this is our ongoing conversation about food, health, weight management, and our endeavor to be and stay healthy in a really tasty world.
With love, kindness, and compassion towards ourselves and others. Today we're talking about the perception of weight gain professionally, personally, and pop culturally.
Has anyone ever offered you unsolicited opinions on your body?
Do you secretly think things about other people's shapes?
And Rick is going to share with you one of his all-time favorite comments that he has gotten about his body.
Oh,
so let's get to
it. You know, Kate, I was in a yoga class the other day, and I was totally wishing you were there.
Thank you.
Because, you know, that's what happens. Thank you. As happens in yoga classes, right? They always want someone to demo a pose. And a lot of times, since I teach yoga, I always have a lot of sympathy for teachers. If no one is stepping up, you know, to do the demo, totally. I'm always like, oh, okay, I'll do it. And that's my first mistake with this whole story. So I bellied up. I bellied up to do to do a demo, and it was a handstand demo. And it's basically, you know, for anyone listening, you stand on your hands and they help take you up. And basically you get up into handstand. Done it a million times, can get up on my own, blah, blah, blah. But afterwards, I came down, people cheered, and the teacher just took a moment, was like, wasn't that amazing? And everyone else was like, yeah. And then the teacher says, because he's a big guy. And I was like, really?
Oh, wow.
And I know, right? It's super sad. And I'm telling you this because this isn't the first time it's happened, right? There's always this sense of awe that someone like me can literally get their body moving or in the air. And I was just like, wow, tough times. It also happened another time when we were just doing a sequence and they said, you know, this is a place where if you want to go up into headstand, for those of you that have a headstand practice, please do. So, of course, I have a practice, so I went up. And it's just so funny how the teacher's like, wow, Rick, that's amazing. That is just simply amazing. Like an elephant is actually standing on its trunk, lifting its entire four legs off the ground.
And just to be clear, it's a different reaction than if you'd had a smaller body, right? Like they wouldn't have been just impressed by your headstand, right? You don't think it was that?
Exactly. Because I've also been in classes when guys have been asked to demo and they're built with muscles. And they'll often, teachers will sometimes often say the same thing. Oh, and that was amazing because he's big. You know what I mean? It's a different, he's big than, and he's big. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Might as well use the words, he's built like a brick shit house, and isn't that amazing?
Right.
And then it's also like, oh, look at him. He got all of that weight up. That is truly amazing.
I just today had a client who was talking about someone in her play who's put in this costume, and she's like, and this costume makes her look fat, and she's a yoga teacher. She's not fat. So there is clearly this preconception, this presumption that anyone who does yoga is, I've had people be shocked that I do yoga for sure over the years. Yeah.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
God, I remember one time I was teaching a class and I was teaching a difficult pose and they were all on their backs and I was teaching it and we were in it. And it's such an aggravating pose to this person that, and we were using straps to get into this pose. And out of the blue, this person like throws down the strap, pops her head up and says, I mean, can you even do advanced poses? You're big.
Lord.
Literally, Kate.
Was this person also big?
No.
That would have made it less
Norm.
bad somehow. Because that would have been like, what she would have meant was, can I do them? You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Totally.
It's funny, big has become like the new word for fat.
Yeah, totally, right?
Because nobody's allowed to say fat, but we're allowed to say big.
God, it just makes me think about this whole thing about perception. And so I thought, well, what do I really think when I see people? I mean, what do you feel like you think when you see a large person? Do you have a different reaction? Do you register it?
I don't know. I know that I have a really hard time knowing when my friends have gained or lost substantial amounts of weight. So I definitely know that if it's somebody that I know already, I don't notice if they've either gotten bigger or smaller. I tend to be pretty unobservant about that. So I don't feel like it's that much on my radar. And I think for me, that's partly because I spent so long in my own life pretending it wasn't the case. Like, I feel like I went through most of my life pretending I wasn't heavy to myself and everyone else. And so I tend not to, I really had blinders around it, I think.
Interesting.
What about you?
You know, it's a great question. I was really thinking about it because I was like, I do notice it. And when I notice it, I do feel like, God, Rick, that's just so not cool, because you don't like it when people do that to you, or at least say stuff to you about your weight, you know, particularly if they don't know me. So I've just gotten in this practice that I just am really working on just seeing it, trying not to see it, right? Well, to notice it, but try not to sometimes judge it, which I feel like I do. And that's only because I judge my own body so much.
Totally. And it's possible that I'm doing that as well and just not so much aware of it. Which leads us to what I've started thinking of as the most depressing guessing game ever. So we're going to play a game.
Awesome.
I've looked into some studies. There have been a lot of studies about people's perceptions of people who are overweight in different contexts. So what do you think are some of the things that research has shown are assumptions that people make about people that are overweight?
I'm going to say that they maybe don't work as hard.
Yep.
They're more negative.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
And I think the other thing I would say is that, God, this is the worst guessing game ever.
Oh my God. And just wait till it's over. Wait till I reveal the answers. It's very depressing.
I was going to say something about that they're just less, overweight people are just less successful in general. They make less money. They don't advance as quickly.
Yeah. Well, that's a true fact. I don't know if that's a presumption. They didn't say whether that was one of the assumptions, but it is actually true. Hey, Rick. So what are you into these days?
I have been into gluten-free pasta. I've been wanting to try it for a while, and so I've been trying it, and it's weird. Like, it's definitely a different texture, and I feel like it's all about, as you know, flavor. So it's interesting.
Yeah. What's it made of?
This one is called Ancient Grain Pasta. Now, that's all I know, but I'm assuming that's what, like quinoa, probably?
I think so. Usually when people say ancient grain, they're referring to quinoa, which makes sense. It would make sense to make it. Yeah. Yeah. Whenever I've had, like, pasta's made out of any kind of fake pasta, it's weird, but yeah. All right, cool. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Thank you. Yeah. So, because I didn't want to cut pasta out, right? So I want to try this. Yeah. So it's a good solution.
Yeah, excellent.
What have you been into?
I'm into making rice out of cauliflower these days.
Oh, that sounds so good. I've only seen that. I've only seen people do that.
It is so good. It's really easy. It's a pain in the butt, though, because you get little tiny flecks of cauliflower all over your kitchen because you cut up the cauliflower and put it in a food processor and just pulse it until it becomes like rice. And then I do a bunch all at once and then keep it in the freezer. And then you can cook it in any number of ways. You can do it in the microwave, they say. You can roast it. You can do it on the stovetop. I've been doing it with like ginger and garlic and a little tamari, and then I use it as the base for a stir fry. It's fantastic.
Nice. I need to try that.
Totally. So from a business perspective, they've shown that if a resume is sent in and it's accompanied by a picture or a video of an overweight person as opposed to a, quote, average weight person, the overweight applicant is rated more negatively and is less likely to be hired, even when it's the exact same resume.
Really?
Uh-huh. So
Wow.
there's like, just take that in for a moment.
I mean, I just want to stop there because it's already so depressing.
I know. I think I've been in denial about this for most of my life. And somebody recently, when I was in the phase of a year or so ago of being much smaller, pointed out to me that, well, you have a lot more credence as a professional when you walk into the room looking like you do now than you did before. And at least they kindly didn't tell me that when I was heavier, but somehow hearing it when I was smaller was still hideous. It may be worse in some ways. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, thank you. You've been sitting on that one, I see. So,
Is your pelvis uneven because you've had that in your hip pocket so long?
I've never heard
I've been working on that one.
Did you just make that up? That was good. I like that.
I've been working on it. I always think this idea, because I'm always amazed when people have something to pull out of their pocket so quickly about some past history thing. And I was like, yeah, how long you been sitting on that one? And is your pelvis uneven? Because one side's been so high because that back wallet's so thick of things you're going to pull out and use.
Wow, it was way better the first time because that was really long that time.
Yeah. Well, that's my ability to kill a joke. Because I always think it's good, Kate, when you're trying to make a joke, that you explain why it's funny.
It's awesome. And to go back and say it again when it worked the first time, definitely repeat it is helpful. Yeah.
Hey, tips from the master.
It's true. And it's funny that in a way, I felt like I've had more comments that affected me negatively after I'd lost weight than I ever have when I've been heavy. And we'll come back to that in a little while, I think, which is weird. It surprises me. But I think people have felt more comfortable talking to me about it at that point and making comments. I think I've had a way less comments in my life than you have. Geared toward weight.
That's super interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So back to the business world. So not only are they less likely to be hired in the first place, overweight employees are given stereotypes including lazy, sloppy, less competent, lacking in self-discipline, disagreeable, less conscientious, and poor role models.
Wow.
I know. I know.
I'm not even sure what I'm supposed to say to that.
Rick and I are just staring into each other's eyes over Skype. Like, what can you say? Okay. And then the final point.
Pretty much.
The final point with regard to the workplace is that they tend to be paid less for the same jobs and are more likely to have lower paying jobs and are less likely to get promoted than thin people with the exact same qualifications.
Oh, God, that burns me.
I know. And I really, as I was looking at this, I was like, is that true? I thought to myself, you know what I mean? I really was like, I'm trying to do some soul searching here. And I'm like, a lot of stereotypes have a grain of truth to them. So what is the grain of truth in that with regard to myself, not other people, but with regard to myself? And boy, it's really tough to come up with them because I'm not most of those things. You know what I mean? Like, I'm really not.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right.
Well, it makes me think.
Yeah.
Did you have something else?
Nope. I mean, yes, but go on.
It just makes me think of, right off the top of my head, Melissa McCarthy, that wonderful comedic actress, because she's lost so much weight.
Yeah.
And there's always this idea that people that are famous when they're heavy, that they can't have the same type of career, particularly comedic actresses. They can't have the same type of career once they lose the weight. So it's been so interesting to watch her. But I mean, my God, she's still making one movie after another. And she still seems hilarious.
You don't think that the humor, her comedy, was in her fat cells?
Well, I'm going to wait and see and judge it, let me tell you. Because movie by movie, she's getting thinner. Plus, when she listens to this podcast and hears my tips on delivering comedic lines, we're going to go through the roof, baby.
She's going to hire us. Okay, I just want to share with you what just happened in my head when you just said that. It's so you just said she's getting thinner and thinner movie by movie. And in my head, I was like, well, I can't wait to see what happens when she gains it back again.
Oh.
Like, what kind of horrible response is that? Like, and it's all about again, it all comes back to me. It's obviously because that happened to me and that's what I'm projecting. And it's the worst thing to lose it and gain it back. We've talked about this before. Like, that was so much harder for me than having never lost it in the first place. And how dare I put that on her that that's going to happen? You know, but
Totally. Well, that's one of those things that's always so fascinating because it's a perception born out of experience, right? Of our own personal experience.
Oprah.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Oprah. I mean, really, she, poor baby, had to do it in the spotlight of the entire universe. You know? I mean, my Lord.
I still think about that time she pulled out that wagon full of fat in her skinny
jeans. In those
jeans.
awesome jeans and that black sweater, looking so fly. Mm-hmm.
And I always remember her saying how that night she went out to have a big old dinner and just kept eating and eating right after that show. And she put all the weight back on. Not all, but it started coming on right away because she'd been on, it was a liquid diet, I think she did, yeah?
It was something ridiculous like that. Yeah, it was something very, I think she later said, not a healthy option. Yeah, it was a crash diet of types. Medically supervised, of course, but still not sustainable, right? The difference between weight loss and weight maintenance, which we will talk about in some other episode because that's a huge topic, actually.
Yeah.
What's required to lose weight is very different than what's required to keep it off, it seems.
Sing it, sister. Sing it.
Mm-hmm. I'm telling you. All right. So back to my data.
That's pretty data. Do you think, I always remember Drew Carey. Like Drew Carey's someone that's he lost a lot of weight. And he's managed to keep it off. And he did it that old pesky way of like eating less and moving more. He did it through pesky good diet and, exercise. Mm-hmm. And it always seems like, I don't think, it hasn't really affected his career. But he hasn't really had a sitcom or anything. He went right to that Price is Right thing.
Oh, I wondered what happened to him.
And then I also think about John Goodman. Remember John Goodman lost all that weight? He was pushing 400 pounds. During the Roseanne show. I was
very worried about him. Yeah.
And now he's looking super good. He's been in some things, but yeah.
I think I'm about to see him in a movie this weekend. It starts with a C. I can't remember what it's called.
Oh, nice.
It doesn't matter. By the time this airs, it won't matter. Do you remember Star Jones from The View?
Yes.
And she had gastric bypass surgery, which she implied she didn't have, and then later came out and said she did. Do you remember that?
Yes,
that was a whole big thing. She implied
awesome
that she lost the weight through diet and exercise, and then people gave her enough crap that she was like, all right, okay. I had the surgery. I think it could have been the lap band. I can't remember. It was some surgical procedure. But I always thought that she lost the weight so fast that it felt like her aura never caught up to her body, and she never looked right on The View to me after that. Like something looked weird. She looked like a giant Star Jones head on like a little stick or something, and like I felt like her body never kind of equalized, which brings to the point that we give as much crap to people who lose weight as gain it. And here I am doing it right here. But I'm not saying she was too skinny, but you know what I mean? I'm still criticizing her body. And again, that's not my business.
Interesting perception, Kate. That's a good one. Yeah, we do.
Hey, Rick, did you know that a 2010 study in the Journal of Pain found that ginger can help reduce exercise-induced muscle pain by up to 25%?
No.
What I don't know is how much ginger and how you're supposed to take it and how often and when and all that stuff, but apparently ginger. But I mean, we know it's an anti-inflammatory, right, along with turmeric and garlic and those kinds of things. Speaking of perceptions, I would like to share more information with you. Wasn't that a good segue?
Please.
Please. We talked about the perceptions that the studies have shown in a professional setting, but there's more. We still have to talk about medical settings and academic settings. So,
oh my God.
In a medical facility, apparently, overweight patients are stereotyped by physicians, nurses, psychologists, dietitians, and medical students. And those perceptions include that those patients are unintelligent, unsuccessful, weak-willed, unpleasant, overindulgent, and lazy. And as a result of that, not surprisingly, heavier patients are more likely to cancel and delay appointments and preventative services, particularly among women, because they don't want to deal with that.
Oh my God. That is even more depressing, Kate,
I know,
than the first thing you told me.
I know. Like, what's more ridiculous than somebody who is potentially at the most risk of health conditions being embarrassed or ashamed to go and seek treatment because they're feeling this vibe from their healthcare workers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just staring into each other's eyes again over Skype.
Exactly. So adolescents, apparently, and we know this is obvious, I'm sure, but if they're teased because of their weight, that's associated with low self-esteem and depression. And overweight teens are more likely to be socially isolated. And there is a greater likelihood of suicide attempts among obese youth.
Oh, God.
And last piece of information here, just to put the capper, if those overweight youths make it through high school, they will be less likely to be accepted to college than their normal weight peers.
Come on. Yep. Wow.
Particularly females.
Again.
I know.
Poor women. Were you called names, or did you have any nicknames in relation to your weight when you were growing up?
I was thinking about that. Certainly in high school and middle school, I wasn't. I think it was a vicious place and everyone was teased for everything. And so I got pot shots about my weight, but I got just as many about my hair and my glasses and my overall geekiness as I did about my weight in middle school and high school. So I don't feel like that was a thing. I felt horribly self-conscious about it, but it didn't come up that much, I don't think. But I remembered something from the dim dank recesses that I had totally forgotten about when I was at my Montessori school, when I was probably somewhere around 4th or 5th grade. This kid called Marshall, who I think we might have had a crush on each other. I think it's possible. Like, we were definitely friends. And he started calling me a blub-a-blub. Something like that.
Blub-a-blub?
Something like blub-a-blub. It had the word blub in it, like blubber. Yeah, blub-a-blub. And
that is terrible.
I know. And it's so interesting because you've said this before, and the same is true of me. When I look back at myself in pictures at that age, I was barely overweight. I felt a lot heavier than I was. But if I look back, I'm like, wow, that's hardly even on the heavy side.
Hardly.
Yeah, I really wasn't. You've seen my pictures. So anyway, that's the one I remember. I didn't let it in. I laughed it off and blew it off. And I think I owned it. Like, I would refer to myself that way in front of him, just so I would prove that it didn't hurt my feelings. But so I didn't really feel it in a deep way. But I think I did that with a lot of things in my childhood. I didn't let things in because I would have felt them so deeply. So it's hard to say how I really felt about it.
Totally, yeah, because I don't think we want to let those things in. We're like, get out, stay out. No one needs that.
Totally. How about you?
Oh, God, yeah. I always remember it started in high school. I got to high school, and the big product at the time, the big thing being advertised were Glad bags, Glad trash bags. Mm-hmm. So I got the nickname of Glad because the tagline for the commercial was, they expand when you fill them. Yeah. Just when we thought this episode couldn't get any more depressing.
Not even clever. Come on, people.
And then somehow that same summer, my full name is Richard, and then my middle name is Robert. During summer, they somehow found out my full name is Richard, my middle name is Robert, so I started being called Dick, which is, short for Richard.
Is it?
And
I've
then
never heard that.
And then somehow put together Bob. So then I came back to school, and my new nickname was Dick Bob. Which doesn't necessarily relate to my weight, but it still wasn't fun.
No, I'm sure it wasn't.
After the year of Glad, they expand when you fill them.
Which is better, Glad or Dick Bob? It's really hard to say.
Well, if you see me on the street, I would much more prefer Dick Bob because it doesn't really relate to my weight. And now it's just funny.
It's true. Yeah, I've never been one of those people that has been ascribed nicknames. Like, I hardly have any nicknames, really. I have very few people in my life who call me anything other than Kate.
Oh,
yeah.
You're so lucky. What do you think? Here's a question I was thinking about. Before I go on, I was going to say the other thing. I agree with you 100%. Now that I look back on pictures of myself, I can't believe that I used to think I was fat. I mean, I was definitely on the chub side, but not fat.
Yeah. So even our own perceptions are warped. So how do we process this? So what do we do about this? Like, we like to leave these episodes with some kind of call to action or some kind of, here's what I'm going to do differently. What do we do here?
I may just go cry into a bowl of ice cream. I don't know. That's a great one. Do you have any ideas?
Well, I think the whole thing is, I mean, one thing we could say is, well, it's just going to motivate me more but that's not true. So that's not, I think, the thing. Like, I'm going to take all this cruelty and depressing information and be motivated to eat healthier. I suppose maybe if I were a different person, but I do think it comes through how do we handle this with, as you had said earlier, with loving kindness toward ourselves rather than beating ourselves up, and how can we stay in the story, stay in the conversation, stay in the work, and not let it drag us down.
You said that to me. The minute you started saying that, I thought, Rick, it's really the biggest way it shows up for me nowadays is as a yoga teacher, and particularly when I go to other classes and teachers comment on it. So part of me is wondering if there's any way afterwards, or, that sounds so silly. Like, afterwards, I could be just that word big, it can have a lot of connotation to some people. Because I hear it all the time. Like, I'll just hear it from strangers. Oh, yeah, he's a big guy. You know what I mean? It's just so odd to me, this whole practice people have of, just referring to someone by their size. So part of me wants to think, oh, could I actually find a way to sort of, gently say, oh, that's just something to be conscious of? Because I've seen it happen before, even though it's, I've seen other people reference in relation to their size.
That would be really cool, because I think people probably don't know that it's having that effect. And so it could be educational, and it might be empowering for you, possibly, to say that.
I think it would really be empowering to me.
Yeah, cool.
Interesting. Okay. I might think about that. Okay, so here's the practice for the week. When you catch yourself judging your body or someone else's, practice recognizing that reaction and just take a moment and appreciate your body with love, kindness, and compassion for all it does for you.
Mm-hmm. And while you're doing that, visit our webpage. You won't believe what I ate. Yeah, exactly. That's a very, very smooth segue. You won't believe what I ate.com. Please visit our Facebook page and send us MP3s or other audio recordings of questions, stories. Tell us what you ate last night. We want to put them in our podcast. You can email those to youwon'tbelievewhatIate@gmail.com.
And remember, subscribe on iTunes and YouTube. And please review us and let us know what you think. And tell everyone you know about us.
And tell them to subscribe. And then also join us for our next episode, which is about fad diets through the ages. It's going to be really fun.
I'm so excited. And remember, this podcast is supported by the generous donation of our listeners. So please visit patreon.com/you won't believe what I ate to support the podcast. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.